Hi, I'm Marlie and I live in Maastricht in the Netherlands. First of all, I would like to thank the Kiva Center and especially Vesper Moore for inviting me to tell you something about the peer support that we practice in Maastricht and surroundings. I work right now as an expert by experience in a team with 2 paid co-workers and about 15 volunteers and some people who are following education as an expert by experience. I think that peer support is very important for me and my colleagues, and has been and still is, in especially this time of COVID and Corona and the lockdowns that we experience, but also in meeting each other in recovery groups, groups where we tell our stories, shared reading sessions, AA meetings, to share our experiences that have been life disrupting or life threatening, as it was or is for many people who are confronted by violence in their home. I'm a true believer in peer support, even though I was trained to be a mental nurse. But I was also trained in those days, at the end of the 70s, beginning of the 80s, to not tell about the life-threatening and life-disrupting experiences I had growing up as a young girl in a family in a coal-mine city. Because I wasn't allowed to tell my story when I was trained, I got my first depression when I was 21. I've had several others. As well as other members in my family. I think peer support is very important for everybody, not just people who are in the mental health, but also people who otherwise are confronted by life-disrupting and life-threatening situations. A couple of years ago, I met Vesper at the Kiva Center, and I was really moved by the way they work there, by the product or the way of working made, I should call it, bridging. I think that a peer support worker is a bridge builder. You walk along the river and you cross the bridge, or you walk along sides to find a meeting point and tell about your experiences. I think it's difficult right now because due to Corona, we're all have to go back to our houses and we need to use all kinds of devices and then find out that nobody's that keen on using the devices. I tried to tell my story a few times and then I thought, oh no, that's not good enough, that's not good enough, that's not good enough. So this is the final one that I'm going to send to Vesper. But you want to do it right, and when you don't know who's your audience, you never know who's right. Maybe that's what happens in the mental health or in sheltered housing or in the community services as well. We all strive to do it the first time perfect. What I've learned through my own experience is that nothing happens the first time perfect, because we're just humans. We have to tell about their own experiences and then see how people respond to it. For instance, we now have some of our peer support workers working at a PhD or with a PhD, and they get a bit mumbled by the words, the language the professional uses or the traditional. I think it's more important that you stay curious, like the old Aristotle did when he walked in Greece on the market square and always said, what, why? Can you explain that to me? Why do you do things? Can we do it a different way? Can we more and more attach to the person that has a question? And not just a mental illness, but you have a question, and then a question can become a problem, and sometimes a problem can end up in a mental illness. To tell you the truth, I always walked away in therapy before I got an official diagnosis because I didn't want to have one. But I know there are other people who are really helped and supported by having a mental diagnosis. One of the things I thought about is survivorship as being in a physical abuse situation for a long time. I've always struggled with the word survivor, because if I'm a survivor, it feels like I'm a victim. And I wasn't a victim. I never had a choice. I wasn't asked to. And that made the person who abused me, gave him the power. I didn't want him to have the power. So I'm still struggling with the word survivorship. I'm more a believer in practical wisdom, learning by experiences, my resilience, my path to recovery, like the heart-to-heart communication that Daniel Fisher was talking about. I've always wanted to meet somebody who could listen to my heart and not to my reason or the rations that I've put in my mind about how to cope with the things that happened to me when I was a young kid. So it's more about self-reliance and believing in yourself and talking to people who have experienced some of the things that I've experienced and found their way in coping with them. It's like Brene Brown in I don't want to talk about guilt. I don't want to talk about shame. I don't want to talk about stigma. I want to talk about I'm me in right now, today, and how do I face tomorrow? How do I get to tomorrow when something happens again that might get me out of balance? Who is my support system? What could be my support system? My support system could be my peer support workers, my friends, or my cats, my partner. A couple of years ago, I've been in a boat in the Antarctic, and the boat went down, so I was shipwrecked, like the Titanic. That's a moment when I felt I'm not going to die, this is not my time, and I believed in me and the strength I had. We survived, otherwise I wouldn't have been here. And I've met some beautiful people, and we share one experience, and we talk about that experience even now, 13 years later. So that proves to me that peer support can be without being in a mental hospital, without being admitted, without having to go to jail, but that you can share all kinds of life stories that have been life-threatening or disrupting at a time. I'm going to swap my paper because some of the English words I've written down. It's like the capability approach from Martin Nussbaum. I think it's about how I feel, how do my senses are, do I have control over me, over my environment? Am I mentally and spiritual well? Those are the things that I share with my peer support workers, and about the willingness, the commitment, our individual freedom to talk about our experiences to professionals in the care and teach them that tactile wisdom that we have is much more important than people thought before. I visited America a couple of times, and I visited the hospitals as well. And I was always surprised by being met with peer support workers at a ward. In the Netherlands, we're still trying to find a way to get into the wards. In some hospitals, we've done that. We're quite good in getting people, the peer support workers, in the community services, because we want to break down the mental health system and build up the community work, the community system. Because when you get sick or mentally ill, I think it's a normal reaction to an unnormal situation. You have to cope with it. So what your body does, it's like getting the flu. You get ill for a few days. But when you get admitted to a hospital, it's not only a few days. It might be months, it might be years. So you get chronic disease. That's something that we want to prevent as peer support workers in the Netherlands. We want you to stay at home and talk to you at home, get you into a job, and not just volunteering work, but also try to finish your school, get a paid job, refine your place in the community. So peer support work means to me a lot. In the community, it means even more. And survivorship goes along with it for some people. I think you have to find your own language in naming the situation that you've been into and the way you cope with it on a day-to-day basis. Anyway, this is my talk. Thanks very much. And Stay safe and take care.